Herm Edwards is out at Arizona State, and now the ASU administration begins their search for their next football coach. Who might some of those candidates be? And who's the next coach that might get fired in the Pac-12? I think we all know who that might be. Let's go.
Our Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, D1 play-by-play broadcaster. Thanks for making this your first listen or your first view of the day if you're watching on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Conference of Champions, which is why, if you have not already, thanks to everybody who already has, like, comment, and subscribe wherever you're listening to or watching this show. I'm joined today by Richie Bradshaw, host of Locked On Sun Devils, who have an interim head coach at the moment, the running backs coach, I believe. And Richie, I've got to be straight with you here. As someone who is in this space talking about these sports, I love a good coaching vacancy. It's fascinating. And we're going to get to all the candidates that we've got in mind and names that have been thrown out there. We've both done some research, thrown some names out, and we'll see if we have any crossover. And we have not discussed them ahead of time, so we get to kind of live react, which is fun. And by the way, for those of you who couldn't figure it out, Karl Dorrell's got the hottest seat in the Pac-12 right now. That's coming up on the show today as well. But Richie, at long last, what you have wanted for a while now, really ever since I've known you, is here. Herm Edwards is gone, and ASU gets to move forward.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't like being that person that's like, oh, this guy needs to be fired, and I can't wait for him to get fired, and this, that, and the other. I try not to be that guy. It gets to be very difficult sometimes because you have situations like what's going on at Arizona State where you need a change in leadership, and that's what ASU got. It's time to rip off the Band-Aid and finally start moving forward and figuring out what your plan is going to be now. And that's what ASU has decided to do. I will be honest, I was not expecting it to be this early in the season, not only because, it's right before Pac-12 play, but mainly because I was not anticipating you to lose to Eastern Michigan. And because that happened, I mean, they just kind of forced their hand and they were like, this is kind of a long time coming. And I think this is probably the time to do it. So now Sean Guano, the running backs coach, is going to be the interim head coach. Guys seem to like him. He's been with the program since 2019, so he's got a few years under his belt, and kids gravitate to him. So, I wouldn't rule out him getting promoted, but goodness gracious, you got to win like 8 games if you want that.
Yeah, he'd have to go on quite a run. He'd have to galvanize the locker room, upgrade the schemes and the game management dramatically from what we've seen, and now you have to change the mood amongst the players because of that loss to Eastern Michigan, having been removed as the head coach. Something that appeared to happen in the end zone, by the way. Didn't look like he made it to the locker room. It kind of seemed like there's a video of him going around. He had a meeting with the athletic director and someone who might have been the president of the university. Don't actually know. He was a older-ish, but not too old guy with white hair, and they were talking, and it kind of seemed like, we're going to go in a different direction. They have. All right, I can't wait anymore. Let's go to the candidates. We're each going to reveal our top 3 that ASU should be looking at here. I'll start since I host the show and I get to determine how these things go. ASU should be in no rush to make this decision. I don't think you need to name a head coach in the next month or 2, or by the time the season ends, or anything like that. Remember how it went with USC last year?
Right.
They fire Clay Helton. They name the defensive backs coach, whose name is eluding me right now. He was the interim head coach. And by the way, a well-liked guy who they have kept on staff. And I think that is a good move on USC's part. It clearly has. Their defense has been forcing a lot of turnovers so far, but I think there is something to that. Just because Sean Aguano doesn't get the head job does not mean
Dante Williams,
that's the guy. Yeah. And does not mean that he shouldn't still be retained on staff, but certainly he'll get a chance, right? Jake Dickert was the, as he put it, interviewing head coach in in 2021. He ultimately got the head coaching job. He's off to a great start for the Cougars, so it's not impossible. You can't rule out Iguano there, but I think you look at USC and you say you name an interim coach, you recognize this season's going to be a wash and nothing good will come of it, be under 500 and everything of that sort. I think you wait and you look at what's happening in the NFL right now with the Carolina Panthers and Richie, if they could get him to come down, right? I'm not going to speculate about the financials and everything because I've heard mixed results about, how much money ASU has and whether or not they could afford a really big time coach like Matt Rhule. But gosh, that's got to be your number one option because what you need now, because ASU has fallen down so far, right? This is not a transitionary hire from Mario Cristobal to Dan Lanning like at Oregon, right? Or heck, even Jake Dickert at Washington State, where you're like, hey, we've been in a good place. I feel like this coach can get us to the next level. You need a rebuild, and Matt Rhule has proved at the college level he is a program builder.
Yes, he is. I mean, he took Baylor and completely rebuilt their image because at the time they were still trying to get back from all the stuff that Art Briles
They
had
were marred
done
by
to
a
that program.
scandal. Boy,
Yeah.
that fit sounds even better. But keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Ours isn't as bad, but neither
No,
here nor there.
no.
Point is, when we're talking about Matt Rhule, is like he knows how to take a program, build it up. He can recruit. My goodness, he's a smart offensive mind. Didn't seem to translate into pros, but I mean, Baylor is still rolling as an offensive program, and it's because Rhule left such a great mark there. I think that's what Arizona State needs is like the last 2 or 3 head coaches have all been defensive minded. I can't remember what Dennis Erickson's mantra was, but
I
Todd
think he was more offense. Don't quote me on that, but that's my instinct.
it was forever ago. But Todd Graham and Herm Edwards, both very defensive minded. It's time that you switch. You go to the offensive side of the football, and you get a new mentality. You get a new culture in your locker room. Matt Rhule has got to be your number one option, like you said. As long as Carolina, unfortunately, because again, you're not asking for these guys to lose their job, but if he were to have his contract terminated by the Carolina Panthers, I mean, Arizona State should be on the phone the minute Adam Schefter breaks that news.
I agree. And the problem for the Sun Devils in that hypothetical is I imagine Nebraska will be on the phone making the same sort of offer. And I think Nebraska has more resources to throw, more dollars to throw at Matt Rhule. Though I don't know how appealing Nebraska is nowadays, right? Like I understand they've got this big, rich history, but their brand is so downtrodden. I don't know that that's a great job anymore. And you have to recruit kids from out of state because you don't have any talent hardly in your backyard. But the pitch there, if you're ASU to Matt Rhule, would be you come here. It's an easier place to get kids to come to school because the campus is more spectacular in Tempe than in Lincoln, and you also have more of a base of talent right in your backyard. Right, like you can find the occasional 5, but a lot of high 3, 4-star recruits that are coming out of the state of Arizona, Gilbert and Mesa. Like there's a myriad of options there. So I think Matt Rhule would be the best hire that they could probably make. There are more hires they could make. We're going to get to all of those potentials. Heck, we might be talking about potential candidates all week. We probably will as they pop up. But right now, we're all cringing at the pump. We're getting eye-popping checks at our favorite restaurants. Inflation is hitting us all where it hurts, and it really hurts. That's why I started using Upside. Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys, these things like gas, groceries, dines out. If that applies to you, Upside is for you. With every purchase, I'm earning cash back thanks to Upside. To get started, download the free Upside app, use my promo code LOCKED, and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's the free Upside app. Use promo code LOCK to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Upside users are earning more than $1 million every week. That's probably why they have a 4.8 star rating on the App Store. $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more using promo code LOCK. Go download the free Upside app today. So, Richie, another candidate who makes my top 3 list of guys that the Sun Devils have to be looking at here. I've always been a Matt Campbell fan at Iowa State. And
You're just speaking my love language right now, Spencer.
I'm glad to
You are
hear.
2 for 2.
I'm glad to hear it because I look at Matt Campbell and I say, what has Iowa State ever been? And he has taken that program and brought them to a point where they've beaten Oklahoma before, where they've beaten Texas before, where they've contended for a Big 12 championship. Now, the difficulty in getting Campbell is the brand of the Pac-12 going forward is inferior to what the perception of being in the Big 12 is. And financially, the numbers bear that out, right? So that might be a tough selling point and whether or not it's a better job. But would I rather be in Ames, Iowa or Tempe, Arizona? I'm taking Tempe. However, if Rhule says, no, I'd rather be in this conference than that one, I understand if he has that perception. But another thing to consider,
We're going to be in that
Arizona's
conference eventually
That's
anyway.
exactly what I was gonna say. Like
Take it easy over there.
it's been suggested crazier things have happened in college football, but just talking about the coach that Matt Campbell is, he's been at Iowa State for a long time, so I don't think he's someone who would say no. I'm fully committed to being here. Like he's given it a really good run, but it's tough to win at Iowa State, and it'd be a lot easier for him to win if he were the head coach of the Sun Devils.
Yeah, I mean, and it took him no time at all to rebuild or not even rebuild the image. Like you said, like Iowa State has never been this household name until Matty Campbell got there. And now we talk about the Cyclones every year as one of the more competitive teams in the Big 12. They just won the Big 12 back in 2020 and then won a Fiesta Bowl with him. So this is definitely a guy that you can build a brand with. People respect Matty Campbell. He got NFL interviews. Like the Jets were all over him. In fact, I think he declined an interview with the Jets, if I'm
Smart
not mistaken.
man.
Yeah. Oh no, good for him. Like I love Robert Saleh, but
who wants to be the head coach of the Jets?
not even me, dude. Not even me.
No.
Matty Campbell is outstanding though. And if you were able to get him, that would be such a huge get for your program. I mean, like you said, like with bringing in Matt Rhule, is Arizona has kids in their own backyard, right? You've got your chaparrals and your oh my god, Brophies and Cactus and all those different high schools that just produce talent like it's nobody's business. But you also have Southern California, not that
Not
far
that
from
far
you,
away. Yeah.
and you have Texas, not that far from you either. There is a lot of reach here for Arizona State to take their recruiting to the next level. Matt Campbell is one of those guys that can get you to come in and play for your program. It's not like Herm Edwards where you got to sell the kids a little bit because he's never been a college coach before. Matt Campbell has been coaching for over 10 years back at his time in Toledo. He has one losing record, and that was his first year at Iowa State. Since then, he's winning 7-8 games every single year. This is a guy people want to play for. This is a guy who the kids gravitate to, and they buy into his mentality. Yeah, you can sign me up for Matt Campbell on every day that ends in Y and twice on Saturdays.
That's a good way of looking at it. My number 3 option. Were those your top 2 as well, Campbell and Rhule? Or Rhule and
Yes,
Campbell,
and
I
I'm
should say?
curious if you're going to go 3 for 3.
Wow, we are just really I promise you everybody, we did not discuss this ahead of time. Like this is just these are who we're looking at here.
Yep.
Urban Meyer. No, I'm not going to suggest it. I mean, it has to come up every time there's a at least semi-legitimate program. I don't think
Always,
I don't
yes.
think Urban would go to Arizona State. I think he'd be
Everyone
more
would just
likely to
be
go to
like, the
Nebraska.
past is the past. Like, come on. It's a new leaf for Urban Meyer.
Yeah. Questionable character, unquestionably great college football coach.
Yes.
Would he go to ASU? I doubt it. It feels like, unfortunately, Sun Devil fans, that it's a little beneath him. So if you're getting your hopes up
Yeah.
on that, I wouldn't count on it. Here's a coach who I don't think it's beneath and should be in the running and should have Arizona State's interest. Kalani Sitake, BYU.
Okay, that wasn't my third, but
Okay.
I would
Okay.
be all over that if you could pull him from BYU.
He's got an incredible. I live in the state of Utah. I was just playing golf earlier today with guys who had kids who went to BYU, and they are familiar with the program. the reputation of Kalani Sitake is airtight. I mean, it is Kyle Whittingham-esque. Maybe it's just a Utah coaches thing, but great guy,
Humble brag.
good football coach. He is really, really well thought of. And I also happen to think he's a good football coach. Like, let's not forget, he won the Pac-12 South in 2021.
Yes, he did.
Ran through. He beat Arizona State. He beat Utah. He beat Washington State, USC. I forget who the other one was. Maybe Arizona.
I think it was U of A.
Yeah, I think it was. Maybe. Anyway, he went 5-0 against the Pac-12 South. You know he'd be able to win there. Whether or not he would see it as an upgrade from BYU to Arizona State, again, Big 12, Pac-12 question. That's where this conference realignment stuff could get really fascinating. But to me, looking at the college football landscape, those are the three guys I would look at if I'm ASU. And that's who I'm calling first, right? I can't speak to whether or not they would, give it a legitimate consideration because I don't know these guys. I don't know them that well. I can speculate from afar. But if I'm ASU, my first call, once the season ends and you start your search, wait for it. Matt Rhule, Matt Campbell, Kalani Sitake. That's my top three. Who is your number three that you were fingers crossed I was gonna agree with you on?
Bill O'Brien.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. Now, I have not been impressed with his time as an offensive coordinator at Alabama. I watched that Texas game, and he was running the ball for 2 yards a carry with Bryce Young as his quarterback, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why they were so determined to run the football in that game. Like, you have a quarterback who can allow you to abandon the run. But that's nitpicking a little because Bill O'Brien got to the playoffs several times with the Houston Texans, and we also can't forget he was the first head coach after the whole Penn State scandal, and he brought them back to relevance, right? And then he left. They hired James Franklin. That's, of course, gone well for the Nittany Lions. But I think people are going to have an initial reaction of like, oh, no, not Bill O'Brien. He sucks. Right. He's this, he's that. And I'm like, I don't know. Nick Saban wants him. Nick Saban coordinators have gone places from the offensive side and had success.
Look at them all. There's way too many to count.
There have been a number, and being a coordinator for Nick Saban is head coach rehab. I understand that, but if it works, that's what ASU's looking for. And he won at Penn State. And I also think the other reason that I actually kind of like that, Richie, is Matt Rhule. He was at Baylor, so maybe he'd want to go back to the Big 12, and he wouldn't want to come to the Pac-12. But Bill O'Brien, right, as I just alluded to, is in coaching rehab right now. So he's looking for any head coaching opportunity. Yeah. So that to me seems like a match stylistically of we need a guy who can win at Arizona State, and Bill O'Brien's like, I want to prove that I can win, and he would have a chance to do that with the Sun Devils.
Yep. And you mentioned it earlier, and this is another reason why I'm so attracted to Bill O'Brien is just like Matt Rhule. Look at the way he pulled a program that was going through some major crap because of big time or not even violations, like just
investigations,
scandals.
right?
Yeah,
investigation hovering over the program. I think that's a great point.
Yep. And he rebuilds their image. I don't want to give him 100% of the credit, but he really did so much to put Penn State back to relevance. And then James Franklin takes over and completely now Penn State is a power team every year in the Big Ten. ASU is going through some stuff right now. They have a really bad image hovering over their program. Yes, it's not as bad as the Baylor and the Penn State stuff that was going on, but nonetheless, I mean, this is a program that definitely needs new leadership. Bill O'Brien can provide that for you. The thing, like you brought up, is a lot of people would be like, oh, no, not Bill O'Brien. And the reason why is he is a personality. He is a very difficult individual to get along with. He is not everyone's cup of tea, and he's definitely an acquired taste, to put it politely. But this guy is definitely someone that kids are going to gravitate to. They're going to look at him and say he had NFL success. He got to work with some pretty good guys. And while his tenure didn't end the way that we were hoping it would, this is still a really smart individual. He got to work with Tom Brady, and like for what it's worth, his biggest highlight is getting in a fight with Tom Brady on the sidelines. I would be all over Bill O'Brien. There was a point in time where he was probably my number one, and I've pushed him down a couple spots because of the two guys we talked about. There's all sorts of guys that you could sub in. The other day I did a YouTube live, and someone brought up Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator with the Chiefs. That would certainly be interesting. I don't know if
interesting. I don't know if I love it because ASU has to turn around the recruiting. Like that has to be a factor when you're looking at this hire for the Sun Devils. The recruiting has bottomed out as low as it can possibly go. I don't just need a better scheme guy on Saturdays. I need a better recruiter. And
you've got 6 kids in your 2020 recruiting class.
Yeah, I question whether Bieniemy could do that. Maybe he could, but I feel like with Herm Edwards, they just tried, bringing a guy down from the NFL to sell him, almost exclusively on NFL Vision. And that hasn't worked very well. We're going to wrap this up for today, but certainly not on the show forever because this is just going to be so very, very interesting to follow. Some other names to follow: Todd Monken, offensive coordinator for Georgia, humming name right now. Pete Thamel threw out, and I like Pete. I think he does really good reporting. Here are the names that he threw out: Kalani Sitake, I like it. Tom Herman, maybe. Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. Chaos theory is what we call that in
that
Jeff
is
Goldblum
exactly
world.
What that is.
That's chaos theory. Troy Calhoun, who's the Air Force head coach, who just smacked Colorado but then lost to Wyoming. Bill O'Brien, Alex Grinch, the DC at USC. No, thank you. Derek Mason, the Oklahoma State DC, who was on the Stanford staff years ago, former head coach at Vanderbilt. Maybe. And then Matt Entz, the coach at North Dakota State. Here's the other one he put on there: Brian Harson.
Why? I was just about to say, our boss, Zach Blackerby, certainly wants to get rid of Brian Harson. And
if he's fired from Auburn, I would not want ASU to go in that direction. I want someone who's going to excite the program, not feel like a retread, right? Like go NFL model of coaching.
No one knows who he is.
Yeah. And hire new upstart coaches or whatnot, or guys who have won a lot before. Not, hey, this guy failed over here, but we think he can succeed over here. Like, I don't know. That doesn't. But those are names to follow, and we will continue to cover it here on the show. We probably won't get resolution for many months till after the season is over, but a lot of different ways they could go. Okay, let's switch over to Colorado and the. That. So coming into the year, I was low on the bus. I thought they'd be last in the Pac-12. They look like they are headed in that direction, unfortunately, for Colorado fans who are getting very frustrated. A number of them would like Karl Dorrell to no longer have his job, which is an understandable feeling at this point in time. Yes. I was willing to their down year as long as they, maybe a little competitive. And I only thought they would win one game, but it's Colorado, and with the new offensive staff, I think you need to give them time. But here's the thing. My preseason record prediction for them was 1-11, which looks like it might be too generous at this point in time, unfortunately, for Buffs fans. I don't know who they're going to beat because I don't think they can score on Cal. I think Arizona's better. I don't know who if they're going to be able to.
They got Arizona State and Boulder.
Oh man, that is a bottom dweller bowl right there,
dude. I'm telling you, I'm not even confident about that game anymore.
No, really I don't think that you should be. But I was willing to give Dorrell time with the new offensive staff, but I was also thinking they would be mildly competitive in these games. And they had a brutal non-conference schedule: TCU at home, at Air Force, at Minnesota. It's tough. I expected them to lose all three, but Richie, it's been ugly. It has been, aside from the first half of the TCU game, a game in which they didn't end up scoring a touchdown. It has been, how could it have been worse? They played 3 quarterbacks on Saturday. JT Shrout, I thought, needed to be named the starter. His completion percentage is wildly low. Lewis is not the guy. I mean, they don't have answers seemingly anywhere. Nothing has gone right. Is Karl Dorrell going to make it through this season?
I don't think so. I feel like you can't. Like, for what it's worth though, like me and you were trying to do everything to hype him up. For one of our upsets, we were talking about how like you can't sleep on Colorado in Boulder with TCU coming to town, and that didn't
Well,
work for them.
week one, like we were saying, like, yeah, week
You
one,
don't know you're bad yet,
yeah, bad
right?
teams don't know they're bad, but Colorado knows they're bad now, and their fans know they're bad.
Yes. Yep. They have 3 offensive touchdowns this year. That's 1 a game in a best case scenario. Karl Dorrell is, to say he's not getting it done is one of the biggest understatements you could possibly come up with for college football right now. Like, he just call a spade, as I have said many a times before. He's not a good head coach. He's got 8 wins in 3 years with his time at Colorado. Like you said, it does not look like there's a win on their schedule. Their best chance is probably Arizona State, and that's because it's a home game. Because if you were going to Tempe, I would write them off. But you got to go to Tucson to play U of A, who's revitalized. They look a lot better. You still got USC, you got Utah.
Do they play Cal? Are they at Cal?
I think they are.
I mean, that's a potential win. I know the Bears have actually looked okay so far. I think it's important to remember, even though they're 2-1 and they played,
They got them in Boulder.
Right? They've got Cal in Boulder.
Yeah.
I think that and Arizona State are their only chances to win games this year. And I mean, Arizona is not as ready as people think. They are, progressing well, which is great to see. And you have to feel good for Wildcat fans there in that sense. And I was
nope.
I was about to say, I know Richie does it on a personal level, but Arizona fans, I got your back. I'm happy that they're showing real signs of life and they get a test this week playing those Cal Bears in Berkeley. But I just don't see it with Colorado. And if you're Karl Dorrell, you have to do a dramatic 180 just to save your job. And you need to at least start competing. I mean, if they play UCLA this week, Bruins are big favorites. UCLA is off to a slow start this year. They're 3-0, sure, but they have not looked sharp. So you have a UCLA team that's coming into your home stadium that is not playing at its best. If you can't even be competitive in that game, and I thought UCLA would be a top 3 team in the Pac-12 this year, looks like They might be middle of the pack, right? Yep. Maybe they can still turn it around, right? They still got those 3 easy wins on the resume and such, but man, Colorado just needs to if Karl Dorrell is going to keep his job, he doesn't necessarily have to win 2, 3, or 4 games here going forward. You just got to be competitive. I mean, they're going into these games. You're playing Air Force, and you're getting routed. You're getting crushed by Air Force, who just lost to Wyoming. Like, that's what I think the Buffs need to see from Dorrell to keep him around after this year, to justify it to their fans who do want to see him let go, is you got to compete.
It's just it's a terrible look for Colorado football right now. The expectations for the Buffs are never ever high. And I mean, they had that one magical year a few years ago with like Philip Lindsay. Yep. And the quarterback was
Steven Montez.
Steven Montez, thank you.
Yeah.
That was a fun team.
I'm sure it was Montez. It might have been the guy before.
No, I'm pretty sure it was Montez. I think you're right.
Montez.
But outside of that, I mean, Buffalo football is consistently bottom feeders in the Pac-12, let alone all of college football, Power 5 and otherwise. And you were hoping that maybe Karl could get you competitive. Similar to Arizona State, the expectations in Boulder are not national championships. It's not even really Pac-12 championships. They want to be bowl eligible, and they're just not. And so much of that falls on the coaching. Similar to Arizona State, they lost a lot in the transfer portal too. Like, no one wants to stay with this program because they're just not going anywhere. They're not even treading water. They are drowning. There are cinder blocks that are tied to their feet, and someone threw them into the Black Sea, and they're just sinking. So it's a bad situation for Colorado. It blows my mind he still has a job. Like, I understand that Herm was the favorite. I don't know how Karl Dorrell was not the favorite, but good for the people who bet on Herm Edwards to be the first Pac-12 coach fired.
Yeah, I think the smart play would have been. I thought Dorrell was a little low on that list. I'm like, David Shaw. No, David Shaw's got a longer
He's
leash than either of these
untouchable, yeah.
guys, and such. And look,
He
you
can come
paint
to
a pretty.
Arizona State. I'll take David Shaw.
Yeah, I think you would, but again, I think Arizona State should aim higher. I think they should use this as an opportunity to rebrand how people perceive them as a football program, because I think an 8-9 win season is what people see as the best they could do.
Right.
But it's not the case. Todd Graham had 2 10-win seasons, and I think Arizona State can be a Pac-12, at least appear in the Pac-12 championship game. And if they build a program that's successful for several years, yeah, I could see them winning the Pac-12. And I don't feel that way about every school, by the way. Colorado, Cal, most notably. I'm like, I don't see how that can happen. And Arizona is also several years away. But you paint a dark picture, but it is dark times in Boulder for the Buffs, and ASU has got their coaching search underway. I suppose they're examining candidates. You know who we want, and we'll continue to discuss. Richie Bradshaw, Locked On Sun Devils, at Richie Brads with a Z36 on Twitter. Check out his show on YouTube wherever you listen to your podcasts. My friend, it's great to talk to you as always. And like I said at the start of the show, I am so here for a coaching vacancy. I love them. They're fascinating, and we'll continue to cover them.
Yep.
Thanks, man.
And yeah, as always, I appreciate you coming on. For what it's worth, a quick little plug is Spencer is going to be coming on Locked On Sun Devils sometime this week. I'm thinking either probably like Wednesday-ish is what I'm thinking. And we're going to continue our conversation for the Herm Edwards search and whatnot. So make sure that you're subscribing over to Locked On Pac-12 and check us out too for all the Herm Edwards talk in the whole wide world.
Yep, we are going to continue to bring it. I appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next time.